YouTube, the channel that continues to censor mildly conservative talk, is now featuring a Canadian sex education channel that teaches graphic sex to a room full of little kids. I guess it's all good as long as none of the tots are wearing MAGA caps. I'm Dr. Duke, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Katie is in Hollywood. She's not with me today. She's meeting with Jeff Dunham's people about the possibility of becoming his latest ventriloquist dummy. Nevertheless, today we're looking at a shocking new sex ed video series on YouTube designed to promote transgenderism, masturbation, and gender confusion to little kids. Plus, a former Planned Parenthood trainer exposes a new sex ed book designed to groom little kids for sex. But we start in Tennessee, where an elementary school sent a 7-year-old home a flyer promoting free condoms and birth control, a 7-year-old. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to announce something new at the Dr. Duke program. After nearly 2 years, the Dr. Duke Show is now excited to welcome daily sponsors. If you'd like to sponsor your company or your hobby, whatever you want to sponsor at the Dr. Duke Show, if you have a business, large or small, we want to partner with you. Our show reaches more than 100,000 people per week on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and iTunes. Plus, we'll provide a banner ad alongside every article posted on FreedomProject.com. To get started, visit FreedomProject.com/advertise, FreedomProject.com/advertise, and let us support your business. It could be an interesting partnership. Okay, our first story. Father is outraged when the school gives a 7-year-old highly sexualized flyers. Now, of course, the school says it was a mistake, but this gets to a bigger problem, and the bigger problem is the school is engaging in so many sexual issues and sexual topics, sexual themes, sexual curricula, that it's almost impossible to know what your kids are getting. It's not that when we find out stuff like this, every now and then something breaks through the cracks and goes viral. It's what are they doing on a daily basis that no one's paying attention to. This particular story is outrageous in and of itself. A father in Tennessee is outraged after his children's elementary school distributed a flyer promoting a 3-day clinic to access free condoms and contraception. Richard Penkowski, a Christian activist who runs an online ministry called Warriors for Christ and who regularly protests against drag queen story hour events at public libraries nationwide, spoke out last week during a school board meeting in Sullivan County about a flyer that his 7-year-old, that's a second grader, brought home last week from his second grade class at Mary Hughes School in Piney Flats. The flyer in question promoted an event at the Appalachian Fairgrounds in Gray, hosted by the Remote Area Medical Volunteer Corps. The event was slated to be held from November 1st to the 3rd, while on one side of the flyer, it offered free dental, medical, and vision services. Other side, however, was a flyer advertising in big, bold letters, quote, free birth control and free pregnancy services. Among other things, the flyer promoted free implants, intrauterine devices, pills, condoms, and more. Quote, since when is it the school's job to give information to my child about birth control, my elementary school child? When did the public schools decide they can teach my child issues regarding morality and sex? Quote, the public schools think they have the right to usurp my authority as their father. And this school does not have the right. Well, unfortunately, and I think the activist knows this, whether they have the moral or legal authority to do it, they're doing it. Schools all across the country have already adopted major aspects of the sexuality curriculum. And, you know, when I was going on almost every week traveling to give talks about Common Core, starting back in 2012, one of the things that we pointed out in every single talk was how Common Core was a Trojan horse, maybe even more dangerous than Common Core's low standard, its conformist ideology, its one-size-fits-all outcome-based standardized testing, maybe even worse than all of those failures. One of the things that we tried to warn parents about that was going to be the worst aspect of this new Common Core curriculum. Why did the federal government want this, Obama's government want this in every school in every state? And they've more or less succeeded in getting it there. They wanted it not necessarily because it was going to destroy education, which we knew it would in the name of social justice, but that it was going to become a way for schools to import all kinds of progressive agenda items under the cover of Common Core. Common Core sort of tied all the schools in the country together, put them under certain federal mandates, tied funding at the state and federal level to certain aspects of incorporation. The testing itself forced schools to change the curriculum plans to meet the Common Core testing. And when that network had been completely set up, you had the perfect delivery device for radical sexual education like you have here now. These are the national sexuality standards, aspects of them being worked out through your kids' Common Core network. This whole uniform way now that we do things. How all the textbook companies are fully on board with this. So now the system is fully in place. It's completely weaponized. All that radical left-wing sexual politics is now in your kids' schools. And as we said it was going to be, it's not just in a health class or a biology class. It's not just in a 2-week sex ed course that your kids had to take once they got to be sophomores in high school. No. This is, my friends, comprehensive sexual education being fully implemented. And what it means by the word comprehensive is your kids aren't going to be able to opt out. It's going to be every aspect of sex from kindergarten through high school, from pre-K through high school. And it's going to include not just biology, not just mechanics, not just the physical consequences of perhaps engaging in sex. It's going to be activist. How do you perform certain sex acts? How do you morally come to accept radical forms of sex? How do you become non-judgmental in some of the most dangerous kinds of sexual behavior? And furthermore, to the chagrin of this pastor and his kids, one of the things that this radical comprehensive sex ed program is going to do is show kids how they can evade parents, how they can get information, they can get birth control, they can get the morning after abortion pill, they can learn more about radical forms of sex and keep it from the parents. And that's where we are today. In fact, our second story demonstrates how far the culture has gone. It's not just something that is located in the schools. I've already mentioned how you have a huge textbook companies that are, including Planned Parenthood, gotten involved with this, who is, we'll see in a moment, who's putting together curriculum and programs to feed this beast, this sex beast that's now unleashed in your public schools. And one of the most alarming things, besides the textbook companies, you have all of these YouTubes. You have all of these social media programs and television shows that are furthering the aims of this radical sexuality. About 6 months ago, we told you about a local a YouTube channel called Cram School, Radical Cram School. And we'll give you some information on that in case you want to go look at that as well, where you had Christina Wong, an Asian American comedian and activist, who is teaching primarily little Asian and Pacific Islander girls on her YouTube channel to become radical agents of communism.
Welcome to Radical Cram School. We're going to learn about social justice, revolution, and how to be powerful in the bodies that you have. Hello, my young comrades.
Hi.
I'm going to show a picture. This is my way of figuring out if you've been tainted by the patriarchy.
It's Donald Duck.
What do we know about him? What do we know about him?
He's bad. Unfortunately, the president. I want to fire him. There's just like this thing about white people that just makes me be like...
And now, with regards to sexuality, the latest story in the news. We have excerpts now from a series of disturbing sex and gender education programming. Videos that have been shared online prompting widespread outrage. This has become a viral story. The videos, produced by a Canadian sex education group, quote, Sex Ed School they call themselves, address issues of transgenderism, masturbation, and sexuality with classrooms full of young children. You have live children sitting in the seats.
So we got this basket of body parts, and you are going to figure out where they go on ginger and blue. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
Ginger is rocking a hairstyle. This is actually pubic hair, which they've used to create a hair transplant.
There's two pubic hairstyles.
Ginger also has not one penis, but two, and 4 testicles. I think you've done a great job. This is very creative. There's no one in the world like Ginger now.
These videos feature a therapist, I guess you could call her, named Nadine Thornhill, who is described as, quote, one of Canada's foremost experts on childhood and adolescent sexuality. We went a long time in Western culture without sexualizing kids. Little 5- and 7-year-olds didn't think about sex, they didn't engage in sex, and yet here we have now people whose sole job is to study and understand the sexuality of tiny children. What you're doing with that kind of a degree is you are forcibly finding sex in children. You've got no job. If you can't find and further sexualize little babies, then you have no work. And Ava Bloom is her partner, a sex research and online sexuality educator. In one episode of this program titled Gender, the two educators, I'm going to call them the two child predators, explain the term non-binary and insist that gender is not biologically determined. Instead, they assert that it is a completely fluid concept.
Gender is how you feel on the inside about whether you're a boy or a girl, a man or a woman. If you're non-binary, feel like neither or both.
Does anybody know what non-binary means?
It's like when you're neither female or male.
It's an umbrella term, so people can also be fluid, feel more like female, more like male, based on a different day or time. It's really individual.
Absolutely.
The instructors leave no room for disagreement in these conversations with kids, these hostage kids. Instead, the child predators masquerading as educators play a true or false game, informing children of the hard facts about woke transgenderism.
Everyone born with a vulva is a girl. True or false?
Or identifies as a girl. Not everybody is sure, and that makes sense. But our genitals actually don't determine our gender. So some people born with vulvas can be boys.
Another true and false is a person's orientation does not change throughout their lifetime.
That's right, it's false. So for some people, they have the same orientation their entire lives, but for other people, it's more fluid, which means that it can change or evolve over the course of their lives.
And these kids, you look at the look on the faces of these kids during some of these conversations, some of them seem genuinely disturbed by this or completely confused. Later, a trans person named Caleb is brought in to teach the young kids more about hormone injections, wearing drag, and gender transitioning and hormone injections to little children. When told that you can be whoever or whatever you identify with, Caleb asked the children their identities. One child says, quote, "I'm a toilet," unquote.
Does everyone have a gender?
Yes.
Toilet.
I don't believe that toilet is a gender.
Wait,
but
you
maybe
saying
it
my
is for
gender?
you. Maybe it is for you.
Maybe it is for you. Maybe your gender can be toilet. This is how far down the rabbit hole or the toilet we've gone with regards to this nonsense. And I have already warned you that Common Core, we've been warning you for 10 years, much more than just a failed educational program. It is the weaponized delivery system through which organizations like Planned Parenthood get inside your kids' school and permeate their curriculum from kindergarten through high school with this kind of nonsense. And that's our third and final story. We have a former Planned Parenthood trainer, a job it was to train people, talking about a new sex ed book that Planned Parenthood is publishing. This book, she says, grooms kids for sex. Over the last couple of weeks, how many of the shows have we done have used the word grooming? It is really now becoming obvious to many people around, and not just conservative people all around the country, the world, are beginning to recognize that what these comprehensive sexuality programs are doing is grooming kids not just for sex, but to adopt radical sexual attitudes and practices and to support radical ideologies, including things like pedophilia. According to Monica Klein, Planned Parenthood's new sex ed book, titled In Case You're Curious, quote, targets children with just enough cuteness to be able to present itself as a resource for curious kids seeking answers about sex. Klein, who left Planned Parenthood after she learned the organization's main goal, in her words, was to develop a continued stream of abortions, said that this book gives the appearance of being age appropriate while it doles out, quote, a whole lot of hypersexualized answers to groom children for early onset sex. And people have been making this argument for a long time, that despite their own rhetoric and despite the fake rhetoric of wanting to be interested in women's health, Planned Parenthood is grooming people for abortions. Abortions and more abortions are the way Planned Parenthood continues to make in all kinds of money, including about $600 million a year of taxpayer funding, which they then turn around and spend on lobbying against conservative states and conservative attitudes towards birth. And that's what we're doing with this. The first chapter of the book is titled, Can You Die from Masturbating Too Much? Subsequent chapters include, Do Guys Really Orgasm in Their Sleep? And I use the word orgasm, not the word they used. And Is 12 Too Young to Know I'm Bi? They justify their actions, Klein says, by stating that they are simply answering the questions of curious youth. Planned Parenthood, she left it, ultimately founded her own website, Klein did. It called It Takes a Family. Her website is It Takes a Family. Now, Klein said that the job of teaching children about sex belongs to the parents. Our opening Christian pastor made the same point. I've made it. Miss Klein has made it. The common sense, the only logical common sense meaningful answer here is stop appropriating the schools what belongs to parents. This is war. This is war. The schools have decided you don't have the right as a mom and dad to teach your kids about sex because you won't teach sex the way they will. We're going to see in an upcoming episode down the road, we've just recently had a teacher come out, an actual middle school teacher come out and excoriate conservative parents and parents generally, arguing that parents have no right to teach their kids about sex, that their religious worldview is backward and contradictory. We should not allow parents to be the primary teachers of sex. That's the same attitude of what we've seen in this show today. In fact, one more quote from Naomi Klein. Quote, "We can stop Planned Parenthood from sexualizing our children by having parents lead the conversation at home, in the community, and through legislation," she said. "It's time we reject Planned Parenthood's practice of eliminating the parent from the children's health care and education." That's exactly right. But notice the one downside of this. Because the schools are sexualizing your kids without your consent and without even informing you most of the time at very young ages, the answer now, perhaps the only answer, is this idea that we have to have these conversations first with our kids. No, we don't. We should keep the kids out of it until they get to much older ages and begin to wage war about a public school system and all of these outside surrogates who are abetting these government institutions in sexualizing our children for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the kids and not for the benefit of the family. They're using sex as a weapon to pull apart traditional morality, decency, religious ideas with regards to sexuality. Things like modesty and innocence, the humility, these things are being destroyed here to satisfy and slake these radical progressives' desire to undo Western culture finally and formally. That's what's going on with this. It's not really about sex when you get down to it. They're using sex to pull apart culture altogether. And what is the glue that holds Western culture together, has for 2,000 years? It's the family structure. They can use sex and radically sexualizing your kids to pull apart that structure. They will, and they are doing it. That's what must be fought. And that'll do for today. If you like the show, please consider supporting it by signing up for our Patriot Club. Just $25 a month keeps us going. And right now, we'll ship you this limited edition Dr. Duke Show tumbler and the Dr. Duke Show stress ball. Just simply visit drdukeshow.com to get started. And don't forget, if you have a business, large or small, we'd love to help you reach more people with a sponsorship. Visit FreedomProject.com and let us know if you're interested. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.